start this? It's just me talking to a camera. How else am I supposed to start this? I have the most judgmental faced monkey plushie just staring at me as I do this, which is mildly uncomfortable. Maybe I should just... There's two. I can't do them both. Hello, my name is Miranda, and welcome to, I guess almost a restart of this, considering it's been almost exactly a year since the last time I posted something on here. To be fair, I think nobody will judge considering how 2020 went. Definitely not the best year, but again, lots of changes, very obviously. Another new background, another new place, still Cardiff. And I have to say, I think this is probably the best looking background I have for almost any of my videos. I'm not to thank for it, it's totally my housemate. She just has better taste in everything than I do. I'm going to admit to that right now. Anyway, so I thought I would start off the year with a video sort of detailing everything I did manage to read in 2020, which if you saw the only video I posted last year, I started off great. I read like 12 books in 2 months, and it steadily declined quite a bit. I think I DNF'd at least one book, and then I was reading a few books for I'd be on it for like 3 months. And then other books I'd finish in like less than a week. So first off, I definitely didn't finish my reading goal, because I usually set about 40 books a year, because that's about 3 books a month, which is the most I usually envision myself reading every month, half the time, with the fact I'm still living the student life. One more semester, one more semester, one more semester, one more. So yeah, along with all the books I did manage to actually finish in 2020, I thought I would also outline my reading goals for 2021 between the dissertation writing, the job hunting, and the K-drama and Korean variety show binging. I have no regrets. Anyway, I have my list on Goodreads here. I'm going to breeze past generally the ones that were in my only video from last year, so the 12 books I read in January, February, because I kind of went more in depth as to what I thought about them and how they were, so I'll mainly be talking about the ones I read after that. So in total for 2020, I managed to finish 32 out of 40 books, which was, you know what, I will take it. I'm proud of myself for that. It was kind of the year of, I don't know, I guess paranormal romances for me, because that was mainly what I wanted to read, because they're really fun, easy reads. So I read quite a few of those in between, like my random fantasy picks, essentially. Also, since I did read books that were in the same series, I won't just go like, oh, I read this and then this and then this. If I get to one that's like, oh, I read this, I'll also list out the other ones in the series I managed to read as well, so that I just give my thoughts on it all in one go. Did not wait. Yes, I did. I did finish a couple series this year. None of them were the romance book series though, because I'm just taking my time with them and I'm enjoying them as I want. Listen, they're light, easy reads. I just enjoy them whenever I want to break from all the really intense fantasy, especially with a few of the ones I'm reading right now, which I will get to. The first book I read in 2020 was First Grave on the Right by Dindara Jones. I still hope I'm saying that correctly. And of course, I did read other books in the series, including the novella For I Have Sinned, as well as books 2 and 3. Second Grave on the Left and Third Grave Dead Ahead. So these are 3 books and 1 novella from the Charlie Davidson series. I'm really enjoying this series. My housemate was the one who introduced them to me because she just really enjoyed them. She had a lot of laughs. And I'm kind of on the same boat. I just really enjoy them. I think they're really, really fun. And you know what? I'm looking forward to finishing this series. I don't know if I'm going to finish it this year, maybe next year. Like I said, I'm taking my time with it and just enjoying each book as I read. They're kind of one of those ones where if I suddenly feel like I just really need something that makes me laugh a little bit, I will pick up one of these ones. Especially since there's usually not a big wait time for them on the library, which I think is both a good and bad thing, because it's good for me because it means I don't have to wait. But it's bad because I think more people should maybe be reading these series, especially if they like paranormal romances, because they're genuinely kind of fun. And I just really like Charlie. Yeah, so that's it. I'm still enjoying the series, still reading it. Probably will read another couple books this year. I don't know. We'll see. Of course, the second book I read in 2020 was the second book in the All Souls trilogy, which was Shadow of Night by Deborah Harkness. I also read book 3, The Book of Life, in 2020, so I have finished the trilogy, and I don't know, I have really mixed feelings about the trilogy because I absolutely adored the first book. Second book, now and again, I really liked it. And the third book, I really liked it best when it was like all the other characters were with the main characters and they were interacting and having some great conversations and banter, and it was just a lot of fun. I also enjoyed like how much research obviously went into these books. It's amazing. I kept looking up random things on Wikipedia, trying to figure out how historically accurate or how, like, if this person in the book actually existed in history, who they were, and it's very impressive. So I think it's a great blend of history and fantasy and everything else that's in it. It's just, I don't really care that much for the mains. Okay, I should probably clarify and say it's not that I don't care for them, it's that I'm not as interested in them as I am with a lot of the side characters. Listen, my favorite character in the entire series only appears like book 2 and book 3, and that's Gallowglass. He is my absolute favorite character. And I remember I've watched season 2 of Discovery of Witches. If you haven't yet, watch both seasons. They are friggin' amazing. But I remember being very heartbroken because they didn't have nearly enough Gallowglass in my opinion. Because I don't mind Diana and Matthew, but now and again, I think they're kind of boring. Like I said, I think the side characters are quite often a lot more fun. There is a lot of stuff about Diana and Matthew's relationship I just couldn't care less reading about. I wanted to get to everything else that was going on. But generally speaking, I really liked the entire trilogy. Glad I read it. Looking forward to the final season of Discovery of Witches when it eventually comes out. As soon as it does, I will probably binge it in... I think we binged season 2 in like 2 days. Yeah, I think we binged it in like 2 days. We couldn't stop. I have no regrets. I also finished the Folk of the Air trilogy in 2020 because I finished the 3rd book of that trilogy, The Queen of Nothing. And if you did see my video on my January-February wrap up for that year, I have very mixed feelings about this final book. I felt like there was something missing. I'm actually contemplating rereading it to see. I don't know if it's going to change my mind about it. I don't know if I'm going to really get more out of it, but I'm contemplating rereading it, so we'll see if that happens. And then there was the continuation of my very sudden paranormal romance, fantasy romance binge with The Goblin King by Shona Husk, which, yeah, no, I'm not going to get back into that. That was still a major disappointment. I'm still very upset about that. I also read Katura and Lord Death, which was by Martine Leavitt. Yeah, I'm going to go with that. This was probably, even though I only rated it like 4 out of 5 stars, one of my absolute favorite books of 2020 because of just how simply beautiful it was. And I kind of want a few more books like that. I might have to see if I can find some books like that, and if I can't, I might just reread it. And then there was The Darkest Warrior by Gina Showalter. I'm not gonna get back into that. That was such a disappointment. And then another paranormal romance series I kind of got back into was the Dark Hunter series by Sheridan Kenyon. I read, how many books did I read? Read Night Pleasures, I read Night Embrace, Dance with the Devil, Kiss of the Night, and Night Play, which was actually the last book I read in 2020. So I read 5 books from that series in 2020. I am planning on continuing. I don't know again how many I'm going to read in 2021, but again, kind of like Charlie Davidson, I'm taking my time with it and just enjoying it. Though I have to admit, I wasn't as keen on the last one I read for 2020, Night Play, which had one of the, the were-hunters? Werewolf thingies? Animal shape-shifting? They're shape-shifters. There's 2 types. Yeah. I don't know, there was something about it that I just wasn't as interested in it, and I remember at one point I was kind of just, I kept thinking I should just skip to the dialogue because that was the most interesting bit. Most of the rest of it was just, wasn't that interesting, which really sucked because usually I find something kind of interesting about everything else to do with the book because I enjoy the characters, I enjoy some of the world building, I enjoy some of the background. Oh, I didn't like Kiss of Night that much either, but like I said, they're enjoyable little books. What was it I called it to a friend? Oh yeah, Dance with the Devil I really was not that fond of. Which one was that? Was that the... Oh yeah, that was Zarek. I did not care for Zarek's book one bit, which was very upsetting because I thought he was going to be interesting. And I was wrong. But yeah, I explained it once to a friend that I called these palette cleansers. I effectively just read them when and after I've read a few too many really complex fantasy books or a lot of ones that had a lot of world building, a lot of story, a lot of God knows what in it, but I just feel like I need something that's a nice little easy read for a bit, and quite often I end up reaching for one of these paranormal romances, so that's kind of what they are to me. So I just enjoy them. That's about it. Right. After that, I then tried The Iron King by Julie Kagawa, and like I said in that other wrap-up video, I literally just read it because I saw Faye Crate posting a bunch of things about it. I think even Fairyly was posting a bunch about it because, I don't know, I guess that's some sort of anniversary of when the books were first published, so some people are coming out with like these specialty editions. So I thought I'd give it a try, and I had a bit too much of the 2000s fantasy, urban fantasy stuff in it that I personally don't like. So I did not enjoy my time reading it one bit. I kind of regret it. I will go as far as to say that, and I will not be continuing with it at all. That's it. And then there was Blood Air by Emilia Wenzhou, which another kind of disappointing read, but I am still invested enough that I do want to try the sequel. Don't know when it's coming out. Eventually I will. Maybe it says on here. Does it tell me? Oh, it's a trilogy now. Why? Red Tigress. When are you out? Ooh, it comes out March. Okay, so I might be reading the sequel in 2021. Maybe it depends on the library waitlist. But yeah, first book was a bit of a letdown. Wasn't too fond of the characters. Either read my review on Goodreads or go watch my last video to hear a little bit more about my thoughts about it. And then the last book that was mentioned in that January-February wrap-up video was Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahurin. Another book I enjoyed. I had a lot of fun with it. I had a lot of laughs. That's about it. I have read the sequel, but I will save my thoughts on it for I think I'm gonna do like bi-monthly wrap-ups this year, or like tri-monthly wrap-ups, because I'm definitely not gonna read enough books in a month to justify a single video. Or maybe I'll do like, I've seen a couple people who do those books I've read lately ones, and maybe I'll do something like that when I read like 6 or 7 books. Either way, you'll hear my thoughts on the sequel when I get to that video. Okay, so now we're getting to books that I had read in 2020 and were not mentioned in my January-February wrap-up. The first one being Big Damn Heroes, which is one of the Firefly novelizations. This one written by, oh god, James Lovegrove and Nancy Holder is what I have on Goodreads, but I'm not entirely sure who wrote it. Either way, I really enjoyed this book. I am a massive Firefly fan. It's one of my all-time favorite sci-fi TV shows that was ever made. And I've seen a couple. But Firefly was always my absolute favorite. I actually watched it out of order, which I still think is hilarious because I watched the movie Serenity first and then I watched the TV series. For those of you who've seen both, you'll understand very quickly why this is a little bit of a problem. Yeah, and I've always been very upset that there was never another season because I thought it was one of the best ones ever made. It's still one of my favorites. I kind of watch it pretty much every single year. So I found out about the novelizations. I actually took out the first book from the library located close to where I live, and I loved it. I don't think it was one of the best novels I've ever read. I've definitely read a lot better just in general, but as a Firefly novel, it took me back to that universe. It brought me back these characters I absolutely adored, and it gave me a whole new story that I think it said that there was meant to be an episode, but it never became one because, of course, the series was canceled. So I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the novels as they come out. This is going to be something I think also I'm just going to read it very slowly. I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to take my time with it. I don't know how many novels there are going to be. It seems like they kind of announce a new one every couple months or something. So I have no idea how long this is going to be. But I know I'm going to enjoy every single one of them in some way, if only because it means I get to spend more time with these characters I adore so much. After that, I read a book I actually picked up from a secondhand bookshop here. I picked it up just on a whim because it sounded really interesting. And it's called The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman. It's the first book in a series, and needless to say, I will not be continuing with it. I didn't really like The Invisible Library. I didn't think it was that interesting. In fact, the only thing I had a vague interest in was, I don't know, the one character. The guy who's like the sidekick for the main female. I guess eventually gonna be a love interest. I won't say what he is in case someone who watches this decides to read it. I won't give away what he is, but he was the only thing that I actually cared about. The Invisible Library follows a main female character. I do not remember her name. I'm not looking it up. And she is a librarian. She's either a librarian or a librarian trainee. I cannot remember what it is, but she works for the Great Library. And the Great Library is this magical dimension library that's massive, and it has portals to different dimensional earths and realms and stuff. And generally, she's a researcher, but she's also an agent who goes to these realms and gets different books that are considered very important and brings them back to the library, the Great Library. It sounds like a very interesting setup. If you think it sounds interesting, definitely give it a try. I thought it sounded very interesting. I didn't really care for pretty much any of the characters except for that one guy, and I don't care enough for him to continue. But yeah, it wasn't terrible. It's just not my kind of book. If I really don't care for the characters in any way, it's very difficult for me to want to continue because my main thing is character. If I don't like the characters, I'm gonna struggle to enjoy the story quite a bit. So after Invisible Library, I then read Damsel by Alana K. Arnold. Now, I think it's meant to be like a feminist fiction literature book or something. I don't know exactly. But Damsel follows a literal damsel from a kingdom where the whole point is a prince is only able to become king after he saves the damsel, who he then marries, and she becomes his queen. And that's how it works every single cycle. The queen will give birth to a prince. The prince grows up. When he's going to become king, the only way he can is he goes and saves this princess from a dragon, a damsel from a dragon. She comes back and she's made queen. It's a cycle that repeats itself over and over and over again. So this book follows the latest of the damsels who has just been rescued and is brought back to the kingdom. And here's the thing. I enjoyed this book until I'd say the second or third last chapter, when a specific revelation was made, because it was a little disturbing. I won't say what it is because if this book sounds interesting, please pick it up. It is actually pretty good. It was just this one revelation. I remember reading it and it was a little too much for me. It made sense. I won't say it was complete nonsense. It was just something that I had to put the book down for a little bit because I had to think about what I just read. But generally, there was another revelation that was made that you sort of pick up on as the book goes that I really enjoyed. I thought it was really cool. It was just this one specific revelation that I also really enjoyed the ending. The ending for the book was spot on. So I did like the book. It was just that one specific bit that, But a lot of the rest of it I really enjoyed. I liked the revelation about the damsels, the secrets that were uncovered, and a lot of the moments leading up to how the damsel sort of learns more about how this cycle works. And the ending scene was, I quite like the ending. So I'd highly recommend this book. It's not bad. It was just that one specific thing. Oh God, I still can't quite get over it. I remember telling two of my friends about it and I'm like, I don't know what to think of this. I just don't know what to think of this. And I don't really think I want to continue thinking about this, so I'm gonna move on. All right, so the next book I read was Onyx and Ivory by Mindy Arnett. This was actually a book I got in a Fairy Loot box quite some time ago. I finally got around to reading it. And I'm going to be honest with you, I've actually forgotten bits and pieces of what I read in it because this was I think just after lockdown was announced was when I started reading this or something like that. It was, I think it was around just when lockdown was announced. It was one of the first books I picked up because I had really wanted to read it. It was also meant to be for the Magical Readathon. Onyx and Ivory follows I think her name is Kate. It's like Kate Brighton or something, and she is a messenger who's like a horseback rider. It's a system in the kingdom. But the thing is, this kingdom is ravaged by these drakes that come out at night. And they kill anyone who isn't behind the protective walls with this magical seals that they have. And she's this female rider, which isn't very common, but she is because she's considered a traitor because of a coup her father tried to stage. Now, Kate's been working as a messenger for a while, incognito for a bit until people found out who she was, but one day the prince who she used to be friends with, so the son of the king her father tried to kill, shows up. They kind of end up going on an adventure together because she discovers his caravan and he's one of the only ones left alive. And, oh God, I don't remember entirely what happened, but she ends up working with him with something to do with the night drakes because they suddenly find out that they're no longer only appearing at night. All of a sudden, there is a breed that's appearing during the day. That's the setup for the plot of the book. I won't say anything else because even though I don't remember a lot of specific details, I do remember really enjoying this book, and I think I'm going to reread it before I read the sequel just so I can sort of remember exactly what I read, because I do remember really enjoying it. I do remember really enjoying kind of what they learned and what happened. If it sounds like something you would enjoy, definitely read it. I thought it was really good, even though, like I said, I can't remember, but that's just, I have an issue with my memory, so we'll just leave it at that. Also, like I said, I read this when lockdown effectively started, so that might have affected how I was reading it. I think I actually took a while to read this book because, yeah, I also had a lot of assignments I had to work on, so that could have also been the other reason. I think I only was like reading it sometimes at night. Yeah, I think I might have to reread it just so I can actually remember what happened in it before I read the sequel. All right, after that, I read a book that was actually one of my highly anticipated release. I think it came out in 2020. I'm pretty sure it did. But that is Criers' Moon by Catherine Purdy. Now, Criers' Moon follows a young woman who is it's like a cross between a Grim Reaper and a siren, but she is part of these group of women who, when they're going to take up their job as these soul farers to help lead the souls to the afterlife, they have to play this recorder to call their one true love, and they must kill them because that's the only way that they can prove their loyalty. Yeah, something like that. So the night that she does this, she is calling her one true love, but instead kind of gets kidnapped by him because he is someone whose father was killed by one of these Siren Grim Reaper peoples. I know there's a name, I can't remember. What is it? Wait, are they just called Bone Criers? What? Oh. I thought there was a different name. They're called Bone Criers. It's in the title. Okay, maybe I'm a little too blonde. This is getting ridiculous. How did I not remember this? I swear I'm not this stupid. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's. Maybe I am this stupid. If my mom watches this, she's just gonna send me another message asking me what color my hair is, and yeah, she's probably gonna do that. I really hope she doesn't watch this. Oh god, I can already think of at least one or two of my friends who would probably do this too. That's upsetting. Anyway, so the main character, she's going to be a bone crier, but she's kidnapped by this man who shows up after she's playing the flute to summon her true love, this bone flute. And he kidnaps her because his father was also summoned by a previous bone crier some years ago. Of course, she killed him because that's what they're supposed to do. So he kidnaps her as retribution because he plans on killing her. I'm not going to give anything else away because the twist and some of the revelations that are made about a few of the characters are really interesting. One of the other main characters is the female, her name is like Annalisa. Yeah, it's like Annalisa or something. Her friend, fuck's sake. Sabine. Her friend Sabine is also heavily involved in this because she tries to save her. Oh, and the male lead's name is Bastien, which, I don't know, I kind of like the name. But yeah, so Bastien kidnaps Annalise. Sabine tries to save Annalise, and there's a lot of revelations that are made, a lot of issues that come up because of some events that happen, and it ends off on honestly a really interesting cliffhanger that I didn't really expect. So I'm looking forward to the sequel. I will say though, this was a very anticipated book for me, and it didn't quite deliver as I hoped it had. I still enjoyed it, but not nearly as much as I had hoped. I am going to say though that there is a good chance that, again, this was something I read pretty early in lockdown, so that could have affected my enjoyment of it. If you've noticed while watching this, I haven't really been giving my actual star ratings for most of these books. They're on Goodreads. I'm not giving them here because I'm fairly positive my feelings for a lot of these books were heavily affected by lockdown. Okay, so after Criers' Moon, already talked about the rest of Charlie Davidson, already talked about All Souls trilogy. So after those, I then read a short book I had gotten for free off of Kobo called Persephone by Ava Poehler. And this is like a Persephone retelling. It's a prequel to a different book I also downloaded as part of like a free deal. I can't remember what it's called, but it follows the god of death. Oh my god, what's his name? The Underworld Saga. Thanatos. Yeah, so I thought I'd read the prequel before I picked up that book because I enjoy reading different modern day books that involve the Greek gods and goddesses. It's a weakness of mine, even more so if it has Persephone and Hades. But I read this book and I'm going to be entirely honest, it was awful. It was really bad. It was so bad that I cannot, in good conscience, recommend this book to anyone. I don't even know if I want to read the next book. That's how bad it was. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, I was skip reading this because I was just kind of trying to get through it and finish it because I was so far into it. It felt stupid to DNF it, so I just kept going. Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad. That's all I'm gonna say. It's another retelling of the Persephone and Hades myth. Not a very good one in my opinion. And it's just, it was painful to read. Even with how short it was painful to read. Yeah, no, I've deleted it off my e-reader. I really don't know if I'm going to read that other one that I have on there. I think I've already deleted it as well because it was so painful. It was just so painful. Yeah, I really didn't like this book. Like, if you really want to try it, go ahead. It's really short. It's not going to take a lot of time to get through it. But personally, I really don't think it's a good book, and I'm still very disappointed. You know, I feel like after that book, it was that moment of, God, I just need something good to read. And for some reason, I decided that meant I had to pick up another random romance book. Absolutely no rating for these because I literally just read it as like the most random thing off my e-reader, but it's called Her Madhatter by Marie Hall. And it's like these kingdom novel series where this fairy godmother goes around and helps these different she's like the fairy godmother for the villains and the bad guys of like the fairy tale kingdom universe. Think of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's the fairy tale universe. So everyone is there. And this fairy godmother is in charge of all the villains and bad guys. I read 2 of the books because I have the first 3 in like a bundle set on my e-reader. I enjoy fairy tale retelling, so I really wanted to try it. So I read the first 2, and that was Her Madhatter and Gerards Beauty. So Madhatter, of course, Madhatter from Alice in Wonderland. The fact that he was made into a bad guy, I don't know, kind of amused me. But at the same time, I'm the person who absolutely loves Alice in the Country of Hearts. And Madhatter in there is a mafia boss. So I'm okay with this. Yeah, it was just one of those really not that great reads, but you know what? I enjoyed my time with it. It was interesting to say the least. The best character, hands down, was that fairy godmother. She was hilarious. And just bless her for just being so done with some of her charges. Because especially Gerard, who is like the Gaston of this fairy tale universe, but he's called Gerard probably because Disney would have gone off after this author if they had used Gaston. So put in a French setting, so... But yeah, his book is the opening is hilarious because she's so done with his antics that it is glorious. Yeah, there's a third book, which is like, I think the Big Bad Wolf from Red Riding Hood. Eventually I will get to it, but not right now. I'm actually contemplating reading a few more books in the series because, like I said, I really enjoy this fairy godmother because she's the fairy godmother of the villains and the bad guys. And, oh, she's just like, all the other fairy godmothers look down on me because these are my charges, but they're really good people at heart. And it's just fun how she also has to deal with them and try to make sure that they're able to get their happily ever after somehow. So I really, I enjoyed that aspect of it. I don't think they're fantastic books by any means, but God, they're kind of fun. The next book I read was another kind of short YA book called The Chaos of Stars by Kirsten White. So I'm actually kind of a fan of Kirsten White in a sense. Like, I adored her Paranormal books. I'm not as fond of And I Darken. In fact, I will go as far as to say I really don't think it was that great. I don't even know if I want to continue with it, despite the fact that after I read it, I initially was fully planning on reading the trilogy. Now, I really don't think I want to. But I read Chaos of the Stars because it sounded something closer to her Paranormal books, which are some of my favorite YA books. I absolutely love the trilogy. It's everything that you love about the 2000s YA paranormal books. Yeah, no, they were a lot of fun. I absolutely adored them. Like, to this day, I still think the main character reminds me of one of my best friends, and I I will never fully let go of that. Doesn't matter how many years it's been, I still like read this character and I see my friend. So Chaos of Stars follows the daughter of Osiris and Isis, the two like head Egyptian gods and goddesses. And the thing is, Isis gives birth to a child every so many years as part of a way to make sure that the gods continue, because gods are able to continue if there are mortals that remember them and keep worship for them. If they don't, it can cause a decline for them. So the main character, what's her name? It's like something to do with Isis, something like that. Isadora, that's her name. But Isadora is now a teenager. She really wants to get away from her mother. She thinks that her mother is a little overbearing, and she really doesn't like this idea that she is, in her mind, easily replaceable, as all other children have been. So she convinces her mom to let her leave and go to America to stay with her older brother for a spell. And I believe, if I remember correctly, he was like the older brother who like managed to sort of leave the family in a sense, so she idolizes him ridiculously. So this book follows Isadora after she goes to America, and it follows as she sort of finds her own way as this daughter of these two gods and discovers a little bit more about what it means for her existence. That's, I think, the best way I'm going to be able to explain it without actually reading the descriptor. I enjoyed this book. I enjoyed this book so much. It took me right back to my enjoyment of her paranormalcy books. It took me right back to my enjoyment of a lot of those 2000s YA books that they're honestly really ridiculous when you look back on a lot of them. But this one, I feel like she knew it was that level of ridiculous and went, okay, I'm just going to have some fun. And that's kind of what made me enjoy it. A lot of the books from like the 2000s YA era, I feel like a few of them took themselves a little too seriously with a lot of things they had, and that's why I didn't enjoy them nearly as much. It's the ones where they didn't take themselves nearly as seriously and they were like, yeah, no, we're meant to just be here for fun, are the ones that I find I enjoy a lot more. So I enjoyed this book. I thought it was really, like, I don't think it's a fantastic book by any standards, but I think it's enjoyable. It's filled with a lot of YA predictability that just makes it enjoyable, and it has like some fun characters. And also this had the Egyptian gods and goddesses, which I haven't found nearly that many. I think supposedly there's a Rick Riordan series that has them. I have absolutely no idea. Most seem to focus on the Greek gods and goddesses, so it was kind of refreshing to have the Egyptian ones instead. So I would honestly really recommend this. I think it's fun, it's very predictable, it's very 2000s YA, and it's very, I don't think it takes itself very seriously, which is, I think, the main reason this book is honestly pretty good. So yeah, read it, enjoy it, have a great time. Yeah, it's another one of those books where I probably would go back to it some years later and just be like, yeah, this is kind of fun. All right, the next one I read was Descendant of the Crane by Joa He. Now, I picked up Descendant of the Crane because I thought it would be just this fun little YA fantasy, historical-ish-esque world adventure. I actually got a lot more than I bargained for when I read this. The whole time I was reading it, I actually thought about a few of the Chinese historical dramas I watch. Yes, I do watch those as well. And one of the big things is, rather than it being like this grand fantastical adventure, it had a lot to do with politics and courtroom matters, which I found kind of interesting. So Descendants of the Crane follows the main character, Hasina. Well, sure, we'll go with that. Hasina. Now, Hasina is the princess of her country, and one day she goes to see her father only to discover he has been murdered. So the story follows as she is trying to figure out what happened to her father, who killed him, how he died, and also this brand new role she's suddenly thrust into of being queen of her nation. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. It focused on the politics of this new queen and this courtroom drama of trying to figure out how the king was murdered and who murdered him. And even the ending wasn't really something I expected. Like, it ends on one big cliffhanger. I don't know if there's going to be any more books that follow this. I believe there has been a problem with the author and her publisher. I don't know the specifics about it, but she has, I think, stated a desire to write more books within this world. And I really hope one of them kind of follows the events after what happened, because I kind of need some answers. If it doesn't, I think I'd also look forward to a prequel that expands more on the background of how the nation was created based on like these, what were they? They're like these religious heroes that created the doctrine of how the entire royal family and the government is now run. Yeah, either way, I'd be very excited if the author wrote more in this world because it's really interesting. It also kind of has this idea that the world is the way it is because there was so much corruption in the previous ruling family that they had to completely dismantle it and create this whole new system for this new royal family, and they blamed it on these people with these powers, and that was the reason why everything was so wrong, so these people are now persecuted because of it. And yeah, I like stories with really good world building and create this really like interesting history that you can tell exactly how this world is the way it is based on their past and events that have happened that have led to what it is. So I really hope the author does actually write more within this world. Again, I don't really know. I kind of check back every couple months right now to see if there's any news of something else. But I really like this book. I got a lot more out of it than I honestly expected I would when I went into it. It was one of those ones that actually helped get me out of a bit of a slump I was feeling. And I would highly recommend this to anyone who wants a book that has a lot of issues with the politics of this new queen and these courtroom scenes about what has happened to the previous king, and then this background of how the country was created, and then just one, like, oh, that ending. It was a cliffhanger I most definitely didn't see coming. I remember as I was getting closer to the end of the book, all I could think was, there's not a lot of pages left. How are we going to resolve this? What is going on? And when it got there, there was so much that was left open for more to come and more stories and more characters, and all I could think was, oh, I really hope this author writes more. Especially for one of the characters, when it's like revealed what's going on with him. I didn't see it coming, and I remember being very shocked when I read it. So I really, really hope she writes more, especially about him, because I need to know more about his decisions and about what's going to come, and please may there be a sequel, please. All right, another Dark Hunters book. This is a book I actually really enjoyed. I can't remember when I read it, but I think I planned on reading it in October, and I most definitely didn't. I think it would have been a great like atmospheric book for October, but I read it afterwards because I was back in a slump, and that just kind of happens. Okay, if the camera angle looks a little different, I had to change my memory card because it was running out. I also had to plug in my camera because I think the battery is, we're not gonna go there. This is a very old camera. I've had it for, oh my gosh, how long have I had this? I've had it since my undergrad. This camera has been with me through a lot. It still has sand from when I was digging in Poland in some of the crevices. And that was back in 2015. So this camera's been with me for a bit. It's traveled. It probably explains why the battery is not doing as well as it used to, but it's still a very good camera. So I refuse to part with it. Also, I'm broke. Right, so this was a book I had planned on reading in October because I thought it would be really atmospheric for October. Definitely didn't happen, but I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moran Garcia. Now, Mexican Gothic follows a young woman who receives a letter from her somewhat newlywed, yeah, because I think it's been a year. I don't know, how long does the newlywed period last? Anyway, she receives a letter from her somewhat newlywed cousin that sounds very suspicious. It sounds like kind of like a cry for help to get out of her husband's family home. So her father kind of sends her to go check up on her, see if she's okay, see if the family maybe needs to step in and take her to, I don't know, a psychiatric hospital. And when she gets there to this old family Gothic manor house, this very fabulous debutante kind of has to become a little bit of a detective. So Mexican Gothic was one of the best books I read last year. I absolutely loved it. It had a fantastic creep factor of the family and the mystery and what was going on with everything and what was happening with the cousin. And I adored the main character. She was this debutante who is very fancy, dressed to the nines, always is like, wants to go out and party and enjoy herself. And I absolutely loved every minute with her. She was just, she was having a fabulous time and she enjoyed herself no matter what. So this book is, I think it's like a suspense thriller book, and it has like a lot of Gothic elements. There is some really creepy scenes in it, like really creepy. I remember I was mainly reading this book at night, and at one point I kind of thought, I don't think this is a good idea. Because I'm like, I don't think I should sleep after reading this, because I might have her nightmares. But I really liked this book. I thought it was greatly atmospheric. The writing was really, really good. The characters were really, really good. The mystery, the suspense, and the background information, the history. I absolutely adored it. It also does deal with themes of racism and some themes of colonialism, which are definitely very, what's the word? I don't know, maybe prevalent? Yeah, prevalent? We're gonna go with the word prevalent. So these themes are prevalent in the book. It is very much, I'm gonna say it's very much part of the story because it does come up quite a bit. But I'm going to be honest, I don't critically read my books that much. I go a lot with whether or not I think the characters in the story were really good. Not nearly enough with themes. In case you can't tell, I was probably the bane of all of my English teachers' existence. Listen, I think the only one who ever was like somewhat okay with things I said was the one that I fully confessed that reading, what was it, In Cold Blood by Truman Capote made me super uncomfortable, and all he said was, it's supposed to. Oh, and maybe the one English lecturer I had who took great amount of joy in how much I bashed The Great Gatsby. I felt like part of him wanted to be very upset with me, but the other part of him found it absolutely hilarious that my stance was it would have been a 20 times more interesting story if it had been about the cheating golfer. Yeah, at least he appreciated my views on that. Maybe reluctantly, but To be fair, I also heavily bashed in front of him my most hated book of all time, which I think he then looked at me and went, you do know this is an award-winning book, and I told him, well, they were all wrong. And I stand by that statement. But back on topic, Mexican Gothic was absolutely fantastic. Highly recommend it if you like thriller, suspense, or these kind of Gothic-y books that are very atmospheric and are kind of creepy. Read it, you will enjoy it, and yeah, that's it. I don't tend to read a lot of books like that. I mainly just read fantasy, but this was one I don't know. I found it, I thought it sounded really interesting, and I do not regret picking it up at all. In fact, it was one of the ones that I read last year, and all I could think as I was reading it was, I think I might need to consider reading more suspense thriller books, because I think I might actually like them. So yeah, I think this book might have actually introduced me to a genre that I didn't know I enjoyed reading, at least. I know I do enjoy watching it. That's just because I tend to watch a lot of crime dramas, so there's going to be some suspense and thriller, and I have no regrets. Right, so next after that, I did actually read the last two books in the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. So I read both Escaping from Houdini and Capturing the Devil. And I have some thoughts on this series. So the Stalking Jack the Ripper series by Carrie Maniscalco, I have finished it, and generally speaking, I did enjoy these books. I enjoyed the first one, I was okay with the second one, I enjoyed the third one, and then there was the fourth one. I feel like I'm on both ends of the spectrum for this, of I did enjoy it, but I also couldn't care less for it. And the main thing was something that happened in the first half of the book that I felt was so unnecessary, I almost DNF'd it. I won't give away what it is, because giving away what it is will ruin a lot of what happens in the other three books. But I just remember this one event happening, and I remember messaging a friend and telling her I was so upset about it that I was honestly contemplating DNFing this book, even though as much as I wasn't a massive fan of this series, I was still enjoying it, that I wanted to go, I wanted to finish it, I wanted to see what happened to these characters. And that ruined a lot of my enjoyment of the final book, and kind of a lot of my enjoyment of this series overall. And then the actual full-on ending, I don't know. I still don't really know how I feel about it. I think it might be a thing with the author, because I have noticed this, because I'll have a wrap up with my full thoughts of it, but I recently read her start of her new series, Kingdom of the Wicked, and I remember reading it. I couldn't care less about the actual main character's inner thoughts and dialogue, but I absolutely adored the banter. And when I think back on the Jack the Ripper series, like Stalking Jack the Ripper series, I kind of had the same thoughts. I really enjoy the banter between a lot of the characters, particularly the two mains, but a lot of the times when it's stuck to the actual main characters, like inner thoughts, and you're in there a lot because that's, like, the books are in her point of view, I couldn't care less. There were, like, every now and again I was okay with it. In the first book, I think it was a lot better. It was the second book onwards, I started having some problems with it. It just wasn't nearly as interesting anymore. But it doesn't mean it was terrible. It's just that I don't think the character is particularly interesting when it's focused just on what she's thinking about herself and what's going on. I also think it's almost, what's it? I'm trying to think of a nice word to put it. Because at one point I remember thinking, oh, we got what's that? That meme or something? It's a really old one. I know it. I'm gonna show my age, aren't I? It's like a slightly older meme of like that guy going like this, and a lot of times people put underneath, oh, we got a badass over here. And I remember thinking that a couple of times, and I was just, So I think it's great for the actual dialogue in it, because the dialogue is usually a lot of fun, particularly Thomas. Like, I'm going to be entirely honest, I think the main reason I continue with this series was entirely because of Thomas Cresswell. Audrey was oftentimes quite boring. The few times I think I enjoyed her was the conversation she had with Thomas, and a couple times when she had conversations with her cousin who shows up, particularly when she's acting the very proper Victorian woman. I don't know, for some reason, it's quite fun when she suddenly goes into these inner dialogue bits about what she's going to wear and the stuff she has to get. Because for some reason, I remember I'm reading it and I'm thinking, yeah, that sounds about right. But generally speaking, I did enjoy the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. It wasn't bad. It's just, I think it's another one of those YA books where if I had been the intended target audience, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But, like, because I'm technically not really that targeted audience, I don't think I enjoyed it nearly as much. But I still thought it was a pretty good series. I did decide to start her new series. And yeah, I would recommend it as a pretty solid YA historical. Like, there's nothing terrible about it. It does play pretty loose and fast with a lot of historical events and historical figures, but I'm pretty forgiving of that stuff for like a YA historical, especially because the author full on admits it in the author's notes. I'm sorry, those author's notes were glorious. I had to read them every single time just to see exactly how many things she changed, because she's like, yeah, no, this is different, this is different, this is different. So I think it's a solid YA historical series. Highly recommend if you like those kind of books, or if you want to read like this series because it sounds interesting. There's nothing really that bad in it. I just, like I said, I kind of didn't care much for Audrey, and that was the main reason why I couldn't enjoy these books as much as I think a lot of other people could. But I would also recommend just reading it for Thomas because he is fun. I think there's like a novella that's based around just him, and if I can somehow manage to get my hands on it through the public library, hopefully they purchase it, I'll read it. Otherwise, I'm gonna be honest, I'm not that bothered. All right, now we're on not the actual last book I read of 2020, but the last one I'll talk about because, as I stated quite a bit earlier, the last book I read was Night Flight by Sherry Kenyon. The last book I'll talk about here that I read in 2020 was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, and this was, I think this is actually the highest rated, the one I rated the highest for 2020. I adored this book. Now, the Poppy War trilogy, all the books have finally come out. I decided to kind of wait until they all came out because I'm kind of the person that doesn't tend to read like books in a series one right after the other, but I've also been noticing that because I haven't been doing it a lot lately, I've been forgetting a lot of things. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna read it when all three of them come out, and then I'll read it, maybe read one or two books between, read the next one or two books between, read the next one. And that's generally still my plan, but that's going to be affected by like my library wait lists. And also the fact that I'm preferring the hope that the actual library will be able to give me a physical copy rather than reading it on my e-reader. So there's going to be like circumstances that are going to affect it, but I am going to read the trilogy, especially because the first book was phenomenal. The Poppy War follows a young war orphan by the name of Ren, and she has managed to win a spot at the most prestigious military academy in her country. So Ren goes to this very prestigious military academy, and there she is, of course, training to become an officer of the military. And during that time, she begins to learn a little bit more about herself and about her country. Also, while she is studying there, all of a sudden, her country breaks out into all-out war with a neighboring country. I can't remember when it happens in the book. I don't think it's halfway. I don't think I'm really giving anything away because you can kind of tell it's leading up to that pretty early in the book, so I really don't think I'm giving anything away by saying that. If I am, I'm really sorry. Poppy War was one of the books I rated the highest. However, I would caution reading this. Because here is the thing. I actually almost got physically ill when I was reading this. It's pretty gruesome. And the saddest thing is, it is based off of an actual kind of historical time frame event. But it was really difficult to read. And I'm gonna say the worst of it happens like later on, like the second half of the book, and it's difficult to get through. I remember I had to keep stopping and looking away because I was like crying, I felt sick, and it was difficult. So I highly recommend this book. I think it is amazing, but I wouldn't say just read it. Read it knowing that you're going in and you're going to be reading some really tough scenes and some tough material, and it's not going to be pleasant a lot. But other than that, it was a very strong start to this trilogy. I'm very excited for the rest of the books. Like I said, I'm planning on reading the whole trilogy this year, but I'm definitely gonna have to like ready myself for it because of the first book had scenes that difficult. I'm a little nervous as to what's going to be in the other books, especially because apparently, I don't know what happens in it, but everyone on Twitter seems to say that they're just crying a lot, which is fair. It seems like a lot of the books I like best are the ones that do that. It's not a good sign. Yeah, so that was my wrap up of the 32 books I did manage to read in 2020. A couple that were disappointments. A couple that I just enjoyed them, they were fun. And then a couple that I absolutely adored. Now we're on to the last little bit, and that's my goals for 2021, which number one, I'm just gonna read what I feel like reading. Not surprising, I think this is just what a lot of people do, but even I've said my goal this year is about 40 books, so like 3 books a month. I'm not really gonna hold myself to that. I put it there because I'd like to read 3 books a month, but if I don't do it, I'm really not gonna beat myself up about it because I'm just reading at my own pace. The other thing is, I have started reading more than 1 book at a time. I'm usually reading about 3 books at a time because I have been noticing that I've been hitting, even if I'm really enjoying a book, I'm hitting moments when I just don't feel like reading it right now. So I'm reading like 3 books at a time that are different enough that if I feel like reading, but I don't feel like reading this one, I feel like reading this one instead. My other main goal for 2021 is I'm going to finish some series. Of course, that includes Poppy War trilogy. I've also started and do plan to finish the David Bad trilogy. I am a little over halfway down the first book. I started a couple months ago. I am loving it. It's just another one of those ones where I'm hitting moments when I'm just like, I don't feel like reading it right now, but it has nothing to do with my enjoyment of it. I've kind of become that kind of a reader where sometimes I'll read something that I really, really love and I'll have moments when I just want to take a bit of a break. I am planning on finishing the Nevernight trilogy. I actually have the last book on my e-reader right now. I'm just building up the courage to actually read it. And when I do, I'll explain my thoughts on it. I do want to get back into the Fallen Kingdoms series. I have the 3rd book also on my e-reader ready to read for when I get there. I'm also thinking I might try branching out a little bit. Like I'm reading YA Contemporary right now, which is not something I usually read. After Mexican Gothic, I'm actually thinking about trying out a couple more suspense and thrillers. But generally speaking, I'm probably gonna be reading a lot of fantasy still. But yeah, no, I think it would be summed up as 3 main points. 1, I'm going to actually finish a couple series because, quite frankly, I really should start finishing some. 2, I'm just gonna read what I want and I'm not gonna hold myself very accountable to an actual reading goal because let's face it, last year was tough. And I just kind of want to enjoy what I read. It doesn't really matter what it is as long as it's just something that allows me to escape for a little while and allows me to enjoy myself for a bit. And 3, and I think this is the most important one that I haven't really mentioned, but I really do need to start doing. But I'm going to actually continue reading if I enjoy it, but I'm going to stop if I don't. Because I do that too often. I'm still reading a lot of things where I'm refusing to DNF it even if I'm not enjoying myself. Like I said, I think I only DNF'd 1 book last year, and that was, again, kind of impressive because it doesn't happen very often. Well, that's it for the list of books I read in 2020 and my hopeful reading goals for 2021. Yeah, we'll see how much I keep to it. The one I'm thinking is going to be an issue is the series one. Actually, maybe the DNF one too. I still have issues with that. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos by me, hopefully if I actually stick to somewhat of a recording schedule this year, be sure to subscribe down below. And hopefully I see you sometime soon. Bye.